Matt Klaskowski, and I am here with Mr. Frank Salas, one of my favorite people in the wedding industry. And Frank's been a friend of On1 for a long time, but just more than that, just super great guy, real down to earth, great style to whatever he does, and everything he touches, and just such a great. As good as he is a wedding photographer, Frank is equally that good at post-processing and just photography in general. So pleasure to have you here, Frank. How's it going, man?
Thank you. Good. Love it, man. Thank you for having me, man. You know, I love your stuff, man, 1,000 times, man. That's inspired me, even though I don't do necessarily landscapes, but you know, everything, all the workflow definitely crosses over a lot of things we do, man. So I definitely appreciate it.
I may do more landscape, but I have such an appreciation for portrait and wedding photography too. So it's one of those things. Like I kind of just went to what I thought I was better at, and I never felt like I was really good at portrait photography. But
no, that's great, man. But it's great to see it. It's really great to see that you're beautiful.
Cool, man. Yeah, but you're right, man. I look at your photos, and there's so much landscape in your images. You know, especially the location that you're in. I think there's so many great landscapes that when you can include the scenery in the wedding and portrait photos, it kind of takes it to a different level.
Yeah. No, that's what I try to do. I mean, we always do the basic traditional photos, which the parents want, right? Just smiling in the camera. And you know, that's just a handful of them. But then when it's time to try to show something unique, you know, I always try to do something in a landscape style, just so that the couple really is the one that inspires it, because they said, hey, you know, we're getting married. Like, obviously I'm 10 minutes from the beach here in Southern California. So certainly a lot of couples that get married here, they'll say, you know, we want to see that. So if we just did all close-ups, they'd be pretty mad at you.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, hey, I'm going to jump right into our interview questions, if you're cool with that.
Yeah. Cool. Fire away.
So first question, and I like asking this question because I've had such a variety of people to interview through all these topics, and I'm getting answers, you know, from people that spend. It's basically, you know, do you like post-processing? Is it a necessary evil? Is it something that you actually like to sit down and do? And I'm getting such a wide range of answers because I think there's so many different styles of shooters out there. So just curious on your thoughts on it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always, you know, kind of been recognized for taking advantage of the post-processing part. And I think that mainly we're just searching for ways of enhancing our photos, whether it be just by adding a filter of some type. I mean, I've started the digital when it first came out. So the raw processing was new to all of us. So really at first it was, other than, you know, making exposure adjustments, really, and a color temperature adjustment. That was really the two things that we started with. So we weren't used to that as photographers. You know, we'd send a roll of film to the lab. So when it was time to now do it ourselves, it was interesting, and it kind of got exciting. And so those of you who processed your own darkroom work before, which I did in the early days, not for customers, but just for learning experiences, you know, that was going back to that. That's to me where the excitement was, where I had control of my image. I just wanted to burn in some area, I wanted to dodge an area, I wanted to brighten and darken and change colors. So that's why I enjoy that. But as far as today, I have two philosophies with it. One, if it's just a quick proof for customers, and I'm doing wedding photography and we're giving them hundreds and hundreds, you know, I'm not going to spend time, certainly other than just a color temperature adjustment, exposure adjustment, and that's it. I'm just going to give them a very neutral, I call it a neutral proof. And then my little carrot to them is that, hey, if you're going to order photos from me, an enlargement or something in the album, then I will process the image so that it'll look a little bit more advanced, if you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. And you know what, man, you have been in your industry, you have been, I think, a pioneer in post-processing. Because you've got such a style for what you do, and you know, it's like you said, you've been doing it. You started shooting digital right away, but you saw that, and I think you really developed a great style for it, because you can see that in your work. I look at a lot of people's work, but I always see that in your work. It doesn't rely on the style. The style that you have fits the photography style you have, and I think it all goes together really good.
Yeah. I think we kind of the photography industry has this divide where, post-processing immediately for some was a bad thing, right? It was like, I heard people saying, echoing or something, saying something like, well, I want to do as little as possible. But then the other point is that people say, well, if you did it right in the camera the first time. So I studied it where every exposure was supposed to be the perfect picture. So I think that when I process my images, I'm hoping that I didn't need to process it. I'm hoping that someone sees my photo and says the lighting is gorgeous, the exposure is gorgeous, the composition is gorgeous. So I feel that when I add up some type of filter or effect, if you would, I'm hoping that it's going to add to it and not repair the photo, if you want to call it, or so on.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of why my view of that.
Cool. All right, next question. Black and white. So we're and the reason why I ask is this will be on the ON1 site, which it's not necessarily dependent on ON1, but I found it an interesting question because we had a black and white app, and now it's been rolled into effects. All the same settings came across with it, but now rather than going to a separate app, it's in with the effects. So just curious, just your feelings on black and white. Do you see a photo and you think that's going to be black and white? Do you take it? Do you do it after? Is it a treatment? Is it something somebody requests from you?
Yeah. It's funny because the black and white photography itself, of course, again, I photographed black and white film, but I too was confused with black and white for many years. And I'll share with you guys really why I feel right now that I can do killer black and whites, and I'll share with you real briefly. But I too was confused with black and white. I had no idea other than just put a roll in the camera, what picture should be black and white. So certainly one quick thing was, okay, is that image, I'm going to pick on a portrait of a family or something. If everybody's smiling, looking at a camera, it's just a very simple standard photo. Maybe adding that black and white effect necessarily doesn't add anything else to the photo, right? That was one issue. When should you use it? So I think a lot of us and that maybe try to emulate a journalistic style when people aren't looking at the camera. There's a storytelling effect to that image. That also plays a role in choosing a black and white. Certainly if it's gorgeous colors of some type, that's not going to work. You'll have to do like the rest of us do. If you're in Lightroom, you hit the V key, right? You look at it for a few seconds,
and then you go back.
But let me fast forward to what I feel confident of black and white as far as the processing part goes, is if the things that we were confused about is we love a contrasty black and white. That was one thing we loved. But when we immediately, whether you're Lightroom or Camera Raw, Photoshop, even a filter, you just clicked it immediately and you add a black and white. And some of them look great, some look okay. Well, actually, none of them look great at first, but some look okay. Some whatever, right?
Flat, so, almost flat in a way.
Yeah. Or if you hit the contrast version of that preset, it's too much. So when I finally just went through and learned how to process a black and white, now it's like, oh my God, I've got this killer way of now, not necessarily the tools to do it, but what to look for in it. So the two tips was that very simple, but is that number one, if I maintain details in my highlights, because remember, for me as a wedding photographer, I'm looking at white dresses, so that's why I pick on the highlights. Mm-hmm. If I maintain really good detail, in fact, sometimes my initial process is really flat on the whites, because muddy, if you would, because of that. Secondly, if you maintain detail in your darks, I'm dealing with black tuxedos. If you maintain those two areas on your file, then when you add a preset, like if I'm in the ON1 Perfect Photo Suite, pick one of the presets in there, I can guarantee you're going to say, oh my God, these are beautiful black and whites. So at a certain point, you're battling with something you weren't aware of, right? You're just clicking around black and whites. But if you study how to process it initially and give yourself the detail, now you when you produce a black and white image, you'll be shocked, like, oh my God, this looks gorgeous. And so So those are my tips. I mean, eventually I'd like to do a video on black and white, but that I really studied that because I too was confused. But lastly, yeah, again, I do like everybody else does. Probably when you look at an image, some images, like, and I kidded about going in the Lightroom and hitting that V key for a shortcut. I do that too. I'll look at it. Maybe what is the skin tone going to look good, or some certain skin tones will look better in black and white. Some don't. I was doing that last night with a photo I did. And then, of course, the overall image itself, will it add effect to it that I like? So anyway, so it really is a battle for that. But if you do find a way to produce and process black and white, you can't wait to do the next one. And I can't wait to do the next one because I know I can do a really killer process.
All right, so Frank, this took a direction where I didn't think it was going to go because I haven't done this in any other interview, but. So part of this pro series is, in addition to the interview, we already talked about that. You're gonna send me a quick editing video. I don't think you've done the editing video yet. Would you be okay doing a black and white conversion for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You piqued my curiosity. Like I want to see it now. So
yeah, no, I really studied it because, like I said, I just having participated in Photoshop education for years, and I mainly did that out of struggle because honestly, when we first were photographing digital, I had no idea what I was doing. I had zero idea what the heck I was doing with that photograph. All I knew was I could take the picture, put it on my computer. The Canon, I was using Canon, of course. Canon only had their digital photo professional that came with it. Again, color temperature, we had no idea what we were looking for, and then exposures, and that was it. There was none of this histogram where now you've got all the separation. So I can tell everybody's totally, you're spoiled right now with this process, but just to identify how to adjust it, and that's what I finally felt that I found the right steps to do that.
I'm dying to see it now, man.
Yeah, I love it. I love black and white.
Really put you on the spot and have you do it now, but that's too much.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's
make that your video for the pro series that we have. That'd be awesome.
I love it.
All right, cool. Next question. So overall post-processing feelings. Do you have an anything goes feeling, or do you have limits?
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to when I first started the digital part to now, we've all kind of progressed in styles. And I think that one funny thing here is that when I'm out in location doing a wedding, everything is so quick. So anybody that does wedding photography knows that we don't have time to drag out our lights all the time. So it's not a commercial shoot. So a quick example, Matt, would be this. So let's say I did my landscape photo I love to do, right? You've got the bride and groom real small in the photo, beautiful scenic, but it's either at the end of the day, I'm exposing for them, but the sky is kind of washed out. So my early on processes was that's not a big deal because later on, I'm going to drop a sky in there, right? I'm going to drop a sky in later on. I'm going to make this thing look like it wasn't the day of. So that was my early on. Now you see a lot of us now dragging around our lights with us everywhere, right? They're dragging around all the strobes so that we can now expose it in one step. We're not having to do that. So I find myself going with that same feel as I'm dragging out the strobes again, so that when I make the capture, I have less processing to do. So realistically, is another secret for myself that I learned is to identify the perfect color temperature, to process that when I do a Lightroom class, to understand, and I don't teach that to like, oh, here's what the exposure does, but what to look for to get that the best color temperature. So again, same with the black and whites, but when I process the image now, I just may only do, again, color temperature, a little bit exposing, working with the shadows. I don't over add clarity. I'm not trying to add any extra grunge in it. So I think real quickly, the first proofing for the customer, just to go back, is very neutral. Color, temperature, exposure type. But when I do go process, here's the last thing I like to do is I will darken and lighten, do some burning and dodging, trying to add a little mood to the photograph. We all like to do a little vignetting, which brings the center of attention to the subject. Since I do print competitions, you kind of get used to that. But last but not least, that's the second or third version I get to, right? I don't know how many of you guys out there do that, but I have sometimes up to 5 or 6 versions of that image because I keep going and going on the next image. I say, oh, I like that preset filter. I'll go into the perfect effects and I love this preset. But what I do is I keep making different PSDs. So the first PSD is just a quick process. Second one has maybe darkening. Third one has more coloring. Fourth one may have a texture overlay. So this way, and I've never been disappointed, but for some reason I have that habit. I'll just keep making duplicates. So, yeah, and it has all those processes along the way. So I guess I can just say this. I show it to my customers. They see it on the wall here. If I know that customer likes some of that processing, that's just been my little goal, so that, you know what, why you're going to invest in a wall portrait from me is because I'm going to spend the time on the artwork. If you the type of customer just likes it natural, then yeah, you can purchase it as is.
Cool.
So to me, it's a business decision.
I think you touched on a good point too, which is you'll do the work where you need to do the work. Dropping in a sky after the shot is probably a lot more work than it is to spend a few minutes to pull out some lights.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a great point, because I've seen your work, and I know I kind of, just from listening to this, you're not opposed to dropping in a sky, but at the same time you don't want to spend a whole lot of time, and that's a lot of work. Everybody asks about that one, but that's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So on average, so let's say, because I'm just going to assume, you do an event, you shoot a wedding, and you come back from that. I understand that process has to be pretty quick, because you've got to get photos to people and whatnot. But let's say you come back from that wedding and you find like the killer shot, like you're like, all right, this is awesome, and I want to use this one in my portfolio. How much time might you spend editing that photo? It's for everything, start to finish. How much, like, this is a killer portfolio photo, I really care about this one, I'm gonna spend some extra time on it.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think I'm just as guilty as all of us. You're looking at the film strip in the bottom of your raw image converter there, and you're seeing that one image that you like. And so I kind of smile, because I'm supposed to be processing the whole job for the customer, but now you get sidetracked on that one image. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier, is that how much time do I spend? It's always been a step by step. In other words, the first one is that neutral conversion. Everything looks just great. Second one, I don't know. I have to look at the image. Does it need to be darkened a little bit? Can I add an effect to it? Do I use my favorite preset in there to kind of add an effect to it? So, I'm not looking to spend time. I don't put a time on it, I guess is a good way to say it. I don't think I really can tell you I can do 20 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, I've spent, an hour or 2 hours on an image, but I tell you what makes me spend a lot of time is that when you start perfecting the process, you want to make sure when you post it, and obviously, your customers won't be as critical, but for me, if I am spending more than 30 minutes, an hour on an image, it's only because I do two things. One, it's for print competition. Chances are I'm going to submit it for that. Number two, I've got other colleagues that are going to probably look at this thing under a microscope, right? So, I get my Wacom tablet out and I zoom in to the corners of it and get the brush perfect and go around those corners a little bit, because and that's what's going to make me go longer, because that's that one hero image I'm going to put on the wall. So thanks to all you guys out there, you're making me try to perfect this darn thing. And, thanks, Matt. And
happy to do it.
But realistically, I don't think, to give you an answer, I don't think I give a time on it. I mean, if a customer is purchasing a photo, certainly what's going to take time is the customer says, I need you to drop in a new background and or do this or that. I'm not cringed on that. My answer to that is great. You know, let me give you an estimate. I'll give you an estimate, and then if that sounds great, then I'll do it. So I really never, if your image looks great already, I don't think that your processing time, and the other thing that I talk about real quickly that is essential to me, other than just the converting black and white, it's important to me, is the exposure. If your exposure is what I consider dead on, at least on the subject matter, and whether you've lights or whatever, that's going to help you tremendously both in your workflow and in processing that image. If you have to do a recover, you're fixing an image of some type, I think that's what we've kind of got the bad rap on it, then yeah, it's going to take you longer. But if you've taken the time to pick the right background, get the subject exactly the way you wanted it, your lighting looks great, everything looks great. I mean, really, what do you have to do that image other than you just adding some of these really cool presets, which is really why the ON1 suite has been great for me, because I don't have to spend all that time. I'm trying to do a business, so I can load it in the browser, pick the one I like, select maybe in Perfect Effects, select one of the presets. I pick some that I like on my own, click on it, and it looks great already because I've already done the initial cleanup right there. So if you get the right tools, you get the right presets, then just my secret is this: just pick a handful that you like and use those all the time, because then that now becomes your style, and you're not trying to sit there and fix it and click on every one and be confused. So
couldn't have said it better, man. I totally, I think it's a great way. It's great advice for people. Presets are awesome. At the same time, get carried away. Just pick a style. You know, you'll find yourself going to the same one. So.
Yeah, you can experiment. I do the same thing, and I think I show it to my customers, and I'll let them see it, and they'll say, "Oh, I like this or like that." I mean, that just allows you to narrow down what you like.
Yeah. All right, last question here. So put yourself back in the days you're first learning Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever it was. Any struggle that you can remember that you had learning a particular topic?
Yeah, I mean, that I just had tons and tons of problems with that, because like I said, originally there was no education in the digital for us at all. I mean, we picked up the camera. I remember coming back, plugging it in, trying to figure out I even remember trying to how to plug in or load the card into my computer to get the image off of there.
Used to be harder.
Yeah, and then the big controversy was, and Matt, you might remember this too, the big controversy was, am I supposed to be shooting this in RAW, or am I supposed to be shooting this in JPEG? I mean, that was like this big, right?
You know what's interesting about that, because I don't want to cut you out. You know what's interesting about that? It's funny you brought that up, because back then, RAW, number one, didn't have as many features in it, and it was so separate. You know, Lightroom has really made RAW editing part of a process, but that camera RAW window in Photoshop has always been like a big clunky side interface, you know. So yeah, I forgot about that. It's funny you mentioned that, but it was RAW. Camera RAW didn't have all the features. It had exposure, shadows, and highlights, and a few other sliders in it, but it's like it didn't have the features that people thought Photoshop had.
Yeah, the Canon Digital Professional that came in the box and your CD, I mean, I think it had the color temperature and just your exposure adjustment. Obviously, it had no whites, had no darks. I try to remember what the other slider it had. So again, that was a struggle, was trying to identify how do I get the skin tone to look great, let alone try to batch process the whole one. So we were all sitting there in every slider, almost in every image. So it was really, back then it was kind of like you would copy the recipes. I remember that was kind of the terminology, copy the recipes and then paste the recipes to as many of those files. And so once I educated myself, watched, again, several people like yourself and others who kind of taught us the processing, then I started bringing it back into what I do. And so that helped out. I think that finally helped out, but that was a struggle, was just trying to identify, was RAW worth using at the time? That was just a big controversy. And then B, how do we process it? So we really wanted it to look as much as we could to emulate the images that we created with the film that we used. And so even to this very day, I still have that in the back of my mind. How can I keep this image so that and again, I know the hard process ones I do won't ever look like a film one, but for my everyday images, how do I get this to look like it's a film image? And so that's what I try to do every day. So it's come a long way. It really has.
I'd say that was a really interesting point. I'd forgotten about that, but you're dead on. I mean, that was a stumbling block. Wouldn't seem like a stumbling block, I think, to a lot of people today, but it was.
Yeah. There's like, whatever now.
Cool, man. Well, hey, just as we wrap things up here, what's the best place for people to find out more about Frank?
Well, I mean, they can go to my website, of course, franksalas.com. But Facebook, I post quite a few images weekly too. So if they go to Frank Salas on Facebook, There's also Frank Salas Photography on Facebook, and even on Instagram, it's Frank Salas Photo. So yeah, I just process everyday images. I always tell everybody, I'm a working photographer, so we're photographing every day, we're processing every day, and so this is a real deal. It's I wish I had more time to spend online with everybody and make tutorials, but really, I don't know, I have fun taking pictures, so that's kind of why I like to do that. So that's my inspiration, is to just try to better my images every day.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for sharing with us. I know I appreciate it. I know everybody watching does too.
I love it. Yeah,
we always get, ON1 always gets great feedback from everything you do. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the black and white video.
All right.
So we'll talk about that when we get offline here. But I think everybody is now, because you really piqued our interest in it. So thanks again, Frank, and we'll talk to you again soon, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.